These are the gifts of the goddess, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the goddess, are you ready to receive? The gifts of the goddess, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the goddess, are you ready to receive? Compassion, compassion, I am ready. Forgiveness, I am ready. Laughter, I am ready. I am ready to receive.
So, my name is Christine Jeffers, and I am currently serving as this Center for Spiritual Living Peninsula's interim minister. It's my honor and my pleasure to do that. On a typical month, and there's only been a couple of typical months so far, I'm here on the third and the fourth Sunday of the month. For next month, I'll be coming back. I'll be here Sunday 11th and the 18th because of Thanksgiving. So I get to be home for Thanksgiving, so I appreciate that. The title of the message this morning does revolve around receiving, but I really want to put that in the context of the fact that you will be receiving a new minister at some point. And so I would like to share with you, give you a little recap of what's called the new minister co-creation process that took place this weekend, and a little bit about what will happen from this point forward. And so this really is a message of receiving. And because our teaching is the science of mind, and we're celebrating all this year, 100 years of the science of mind, there really is a very specific set of principles, spiritual principles, that are involved in creating the foundation and the faith to receive. So I want to first share with you a little story about a group of frogs. And so if you can imagine a group of very green, iridescent frogs hopping around, and of course frogs like water, right? So they are coming near the water. And, sometimes as we're hopping along in our life, we don't see the pitfalls. So in this case, what they thought was water was actually a cavern, a pit. And so many of the frogs who were leading the way fell in to the pit. And when the other frogs saw ahead how deep the pit was, they came to the edge, and all of a sudden their brothers and sisters, just disappeared. And so they had the foresight to stop, to look over the edge, and to see their green brothers and sisters down in the pit. So it was a very deep pit. And the frogs down at the bottom began to jump and get very tired. They were exerting a tremendous amount of effort. And what was going on up at the top with their brothers and sisters, they were hearing them peering over the top and saying, "Oh my gosh, it's deeper than you even think it is. This is the deepest pit I've ever seen. You're never going to make it out." And so little by little, the frogs that were exerting a lot of effort jumping to try to get up out of the pit began to get tired, and little by little, in a very short period of time, actually, for the sake of moving the story along, they gave up and they stopped jumping. But the frogs up at the rim noticed that there were two frogs that were still going at it. And these frogs did not seem like they were efforting. They were just enthusiastically and with joy meeting the obstacles like it was a game. And they would look up every once in a while, and the frogs up at the top were saying, "Oh my gosh, the pit is so deep, the pit is so deep." Well, eventually all of the jumping and the increased momentum and the joy and the enthusiasm and the knowing that there was a way that they were finally going to get out of the pit, they did. And so the two frogs up at the top, said to them, "Don't you know you couldn't get out? It was so deep." And the two frogs that had come up out of the pit said, "We're deaf." Now, Jesus said, "We are in the world, but we are not of it." And the Science of Mind teaching has very, very clearly identified the fact that God is our source, that we are one with our source, that in truth there is no separation between our source and us, that there really is only one thing, and that we are microcosms of the macrocosm. And that this divine energy is what binds us together in consciousness through our heart, through the idea of love. And sometimes, in order to live our lives that way, we have to turn off some of our five senses. We have to turn off and turn away from the things that we hear. And sometimes we have to even turn away from some of the things that our habitual intellect, who thinks that it's separate and apart from its source, we have to turn away from those thoughts and recognize the difference between divine inspiration and intuition and old habitual thoughts that say, "I'm never going to get out of this mess." Now, speaking for the Center for Spiritual Living Peninsula, I can tell you that the members and the leadership council and the practitioners do not have a pattern of habitual thinking that says we're never going to get out of this situation that we don't have a minister. And so they are really practicing the principle, the other principle that one of the disciples of Jesus, Peter, embraced. And in Peter's quiet contemplation with Source, what he heard intuitively, the voice of God within him, making itself known through his mind with a direct command, Peter was told, build your church upon this rock. Now, Peter metaphysically as one of the disciples represents faith. For those of you that may know or recall some of the stories of the Bible, Peter had great faith. He had pitfalls for sure. He fell in holes. He was a spiritual being like all the rest of us, having a human experience. And so what he knew was that there was something within him, this spirit, this truth, this source, this one infinite mind that contained all possibilities. There was that was absolutely clear. But out in the world, he was faced with obstacles, with conditions that seemingly got in the way. Now, this past weekend, many of you were here from either coming Thursday night, which was the healing process for co-creation, and then there were 13 people, and one had to be with us remotely, and 12 people here in this room Friday night from, well, actually we were here from about 6:15 until at least 9:30 Friday night. Yesterday, the work took place from 9 to about 5:20, and then cleaning up. But I want to articulate that the work on Friday night and all day yesterday by the team that was representing everyone else could not have taken place without the foundation that was built Thursday night. Now, we would be here a lot longer than any of us want to be if I went too much in depth with the things up on the board, or up on the wall. Some of them I will talk about. But what I want you to know, it's not in any particular order, that the group was very wanted to share with you some of the things that were going on. And I realize it's out of context, it doesn't make sense. But toward the end of my message, we're going to pass out the final result of this, and you'll see the difference. So the purpose of the weekend was to create what's called a sacred covenant of agreements for your new minister. Now, just as Peter said, receive the message, build my church upon this rock, the foundation of faith. What this group did with the beginning of the foundation that was poured Friday night or Thursday night through the healing was to put their trust and their faith first individually in the one source, that one mind that contains all possibility, to anchor into that. Now, when that is done in an intentional, prayerful way, what happens is that there is a foundation of oneness built on the idea that there is only one God, one life. That life is good. That life is my life now. And it is there that we come into conscious unity of oneness. So this is truly a process of turning away from all of our outer senses and the conditions and the experiences of the world. And, you know, I do want to say, in light of the shootings and the events that have been happening over the last 5 days, I am in no way suggesting that we don't have compassion. that we don't have questions, that we don't have concern. But what I am suggesting is that to really be open to allowing within ourselves a container of faith to come through, that we become part of the problem. And that by turning within and away from our outer senses to the truth of our being, that it is the one mind of God expressed as my mind coming together that creates the opening within me for answers, for knowing what is mine to do. And that may be just sitting in my chair in prayerful contemplation and finding any place within myself that I hold resentments or judgments against another. So the oneness that was created beginning on Thursday night and then Friday night created a greater container for what Spirit is really ready to do by means of this group to come forward in a practical way. So I think that at this point, I want to, those of you that are going to pass out the covenant, I'd like to continue with what I want to say with you able to see the end result. A couple of you have this maybe you could just send it down the row. Oh, and I need one as well, if there's extra. Thank you. One of the things you're going to notice as soon as you see that is this is a lot neater than that. Now, the form that you have this in right now is a personalized prayer. And in the near future, you're going to see it in a different form. But for right now, I'm going to read this out loud, and if you would follow along, I'm going to stop at certain places and just say a few things about this. So, first, as I said, before the group began, and throughout the whole process, we had chanting opportunities, we had prayer opportunities, we had reminders in many different ways to turn away from the outer appearance and connect back in for divine inspiration. And so the way that outpictured is that there were three different pieces of the. Let me back up a second. All right. So I'm going to read the covenant and stop along the way. There is only one life. This life is good. This life is God. This life is my life now. In knowing that I am one with the life that is God, I therefore know that I am one with all its blessed expressions, which includes the presence of a new minister for my beloved spiritual community. Because I know the highest purpose of my new minister is to glorify God, I therefore know that my new minister is a revelation of God as wholeness. So one of the first pieces of work was for the group to come into agreement on a word that represented the quality of God that they wanted to build their faith and then share with the rest of you. And the word chosen is wholeness. Now, this morning, I looked at the 10 core principles of the science of mind, and one of them I see is wholeness. And it says, spirit is transcendent, perfect, whole, a perfect whole that contains and embraces all seeming opposites. As human beings, we have free will and can choose what we experience, whether it be positive or negative. The same principle that brings us freedom, prosperity, and joy also allows us to experience bondage, lack, misery, according to our consciousness. In other words, according to where we put our focus. So wholeness is a word, it's a quality of God on which you all get to build your faith, to know that in the infinite mind of God, that is your mind, that you are open and receptive to the most magnificent, expansive, perfect right minister for you. And in actuality, that minister already exists within the mind of God. And it's awaiting an opening to begin to show up. So the next part that the group did was to choose a quote or a scripture that would represent the word wholeness. And from Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind textbook, what we have is wholeness fills my entire being with the realization of love and perfection. So backing up a part of the prayer, because I know the highest purpose of my new minister is to glorify God, I therefore know that my new minister is a revelation of God as wholeness. I further know that my new minister is the fulfillment of that which has been promised by God, for it is written, wholeness fills my entire being with the realization of love and perfection. As I stand in agreement with my beloved community, I see my new minister revealed before me as, and this is the current center's vision, touching hearts, transforming lives, creating a world that works for everyone. Now, lastly, I want to share with you one of the most important parts of the process, and that is coming into agreement without anyone feeling diminished or conquered. So you can imagine that when you have 13 people sitting around a table, coming up with a word, coming up with a quote or a scripture, and then beginning to work on creating the intentions for the new minister, you can imagine that there's a lot of different viewpoints, right? And that whenever a seeming problem comes up, that people have many different viewpoints about how to handle that. So one of the principles that we worked with and talked about extensively and kept returning to is that we have our viewpoints. They all have validity. But when we find an anchor in our values, as opposed to adhering and even getting stuck on our viewpoint, that's where we can come together in agreement. So I might say this way or this idea, and someone else says, well, I want a minister that does this and this way. But when we look within at what are the values that my view represents, then we talk about wholeness. We talk about love. We talk about the outcome, joy, abundance, peace, enlightenment, inspiration. All of the things that we really want to feel and have ignited within as a result of this minister. So what we have now are these five intentions. The first three are what's called universal intentions. So there's one there that says, preacher, number 1, to inspire me to live as love in the expression of wholeness. This particular intention, the group said with quick consensus, as a universal intention, that is good. That for a speaker, for a message, for a preacher, that what they value is to be inspired to live as love in the expression of wholeness. And when you take that and personalize it, what we have is, I am inspired to live as love in the expression of my wholeness. Now, those of you who have heard me talk before may have heard me say, you are your new minister. And that's the reason that we take these and put them in the I am and make this a personal prayer. Because as I embody these things, then this thing that we believe in, that this universal presence that we call God or Spirit or Divine Mind, it's also a responsive power. And that my beliefs and what I focus on and take in, mind, spirit, soul, and body, and form a belief, that then that becomes my reality. That's what I draw to me. So the work that was done this weekend gives you the remaining affirmations to build your consciousness about yourself and your new minister. So would you be willing to read these out loud with me, beginning at under universal affirmation? Okay. I am inspired to live as love in the expression of wholeness. I am awakening the wisdom within me. I am applying spiritual principles through the power of love. I am expanding our wisdom and knowledge through mystical and religious studies. I am extending the power of love through social activism to co-create a world that works for everyone. And lastly, as I now accept the highest expression of my new minister into my life, I know that there will be revealed, will glorify God, and serve the highest and greatest good of all who are touched by their presence. I am grateful God is gracious. So as one of the participants, Richard Marr, who talked about forest bathing last week, came up to me and said, the foundation was built this weekend. And what else?
The framing and the wall.
And the framing and the walls. So what's needed?
Decor, decoration.
Individualization. So what is needed now is for you to take these affirmations and build your church. Now, when I say build your church, that is this spiritual community. But we all know that what you bring to building this spiritual community is an expression of who you are. So first and foremost, when you read these and experience the way they resonate in you personally, you bring your personal self to it, you begin to make a difference and be an agent for wholeness, for love, for peace, for healing. You receive the teacher within you that will change your life. It's amazing the way sometimes we think we're the frogs, and that in order to build our life, the way to do it is to jump higher and higher and higher. and to put more effort, or to try to figure it out, to use our intellect, which is really only based on what we've experienced before. So the question is, are you ready to stop just recreating in your life and begin to co-create with the one mind of spirit? I believe you. I hear you. I see you. I agree with you. And the God in me supports your intention for a new minister, the right minister for you, that will inspire, that will lead you in the direction of healing, that will teach spiritual principles, and support you in embodying those in order to make the world a better place. It is possible. And so it is. And the picture of everyone but Reverend Linda, who was with us some of the time remotely, but she was with us. She had her workbook and she was with us. So blessings, everyone. See you on the 11th.